I'd like to begin with a quote and really a prayer from Father Pedro Arrupe. And this is how it goes. Nothing is more practical than finding God, than falling in love in a quite absolute final way. What you are in love with, what seizes your imagination, will affect everything. It will decide what will get you out of bed in the morning, what will you do in your evenings, how you spend your weekends, what you read, who you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you with joy and gratitude. So fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything. I think it's so appropriate for when we are discussing what ministry is about. There are, as you know, there are the 4 pillars, and very often, if you would just look up the 4 pillars of Dominican life, you might see some other things besides ministry. You might see service. You might see this 3rd pillar, if you will, in terms of preaching. And most certainly, my sense is that all of those are very much intertwined. They're intertwined because the whole nature of what we're about as Dominicans is preaching. Now, I have to say, that scares some people. You know, when I first heard about preaching, I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to stand up and, preach in the pulpit or whatever? And in fact, it's not that at all. It could be. I mean, it most certainly is. And we most certainly have wonderful preachers here in this house, as well as in our congregation, as well as other Dominicans. But it's also in our actions. It's also in the service that we do. It's also in our ministries. And so those 3 terms most certainly are connected in many, many ways. So I don't want you to leave this weekend thinking, oh, they're all about pulpit preaching. Not at all. Not at all. As I think it was St. Francis who said, preach always, and if you need to, do it with words. So that's what we're about. So we're going to look at the source of preaching as Dominican Sisters of Peace in particular. It was interesting what Pat was saying about it in many ways. Everything okay?
Yeah, no, you keep
Oh,
going.
okay.
Just ignore me. Ignore the woman behind the curtain.
Okay.
Okay.
Pat, about 5 years ago, I was considering changing, not Ministry of Teaching, but changing the university. And so what I did is I did talk to Pat because it was going to be a major change in some ways. And Pat said something that has always been with me. She said, and she said it again a little bit, her role and her goal is always that every person has what it takes to be the best that they can be. She said happy in this little talk before, but it really is about making each person being the best person that they can be. And it's a whole part of what we consider in terms of ministry. We take the Dominican Sisters of Peace, take our sense of ministry from the gospel. From the beautiful gospel, for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. It's from St. Matthew's Gospel. So that's really where we get our sense of ministry in our Dominican life. Now, when you go to as I'm sure many of you have, you've looked at our website, and personally, I sometimes have, I don't know about the other sisters or any of you, they sometimes have a hard time finding where things are, you know? And so I asked June if she could just share with us on the website, okay? On the website, if you go to the main page, June, if you could just go to the home page.
Okay, and Tara and Terry, I'll share screen in just a minute.
Yeah, go
Right
to
there.
the main page, and right there, if you go to the main page and you look under ministries, it's really at the top of the menu bar. There you will see so many of our ministries, and it really is really exciting. One of the things that I loved about our coming together is that it brought all the different smaller congregations together as one, is it gave us such a variety of gifts. And that, I think, is really what we will give to the church as a lasting gift. So you will see ecology centers. Terry, this is for you. We have 4 of them, okay? And hopefully, when you get to Columbus sometimes, or when you get to Akron, or we have one here in Bath, it's relatively close to here. And it's beautiful acreage, and we have just devoted it to ecology. It was our Crown Point space and a Crown Point Ecology Center. We do education pieces. Yeah, and June is just going to go through some of these. You know, she's just going to flash through some of those.
Yeah.
They are on there. They're in a number of places on there, but definitely under the ministries. There you see it, the list. So there's quite a few. We have Shepherd's Corners in Columbus. We have Heartland Farms from Kansas. And then we have St. Catherine Farms in Kentucky. So we have a rich tradition of preserving the earth and keeping God's creation alive and well. Education. Many of our sisters started off in education. And in a sense, we all are a part of that. You know, I think that you never can get out of that teaching mode, because it's all a part of you and it helps you in so many ways, I think. In terms of education, there's adult education. We have 3 centers around the country that help mostly in the East. We have 2 in the East, and then we have 1 in Columbus, the Dominican Learning Centers. These are for adults with, and there are videos to many of these programs. So I really want you to, if you're interested in any of these, they really, our communications office have really done a wonderful job in terms of really telling you what you're about. I'm a friend of Sister Shawn Fitzpatrick, and I recently emailed her because one of my students, when I volunteered for GED, passed his GED. And I said to her, I know what you go through almost on a daily basis. The frustration when they do not do well, the importance of what you're doing, and the elation when they do well. So we have wonderful, and they do GED, but they also do preparation for college, English, ESL. So our sisters are very much dedicated to this. This is, I always tell my students at Kent State, nuns never retire, they just change jobs. And so many of our sisters who work at these are retired sisters, and they just love education, just like Laura. And it's a really beautiful example of that. So the next thing is we also have primary and secondary education. We have 4 schools, including Our Lady of the Elms. We have St. Agnes. We also have St. Mary's, and we have Dominican Academy. Many of these are for all girls. Some are co-ed. Our preschool here is co-ed, as well as I think it's in Nashville, the St. Agnes is also St. Michael's, it's more for boys. So we have a rich tradition, and we may not have a lot of sisters in those places, but The sisters are on boards. They make sure that that charism is carried through in everything that they do. So it really is, and the students really do well. I mean, Maura is a testament of, we did a survey recently of young people for what they believed in peace and justice. And a number of students who responded to the survey were from our high school as well as Dominican Academy. And many of them spoke about the importance of Maura's presence, that it may not have been directly in the classroom, but she was there and she was. Now, I have to also tell you an aside about Maura. We sometimes go out for ice cream, and it's honestly, every single time we go out, somebody comes up to Maura and go, "Hi, Sister Maura." Everybody knows Maura. So it's like, if you ever go out to ice cream with her, you will know that they will come up to you. And not even ice cream, dinner, anywhere. It's always that, which I really think it says a lot about the presence that we have in our schools. We also have universities. We have Ohio Dominican. We have Albertus Magnus. And those are wonderful universities. They really are just thriving and really are helping so much. So it's really is exciting to see those. And it offers our sisters, there's Ohio Dominican in Columbus. It's really a beautiful place. Dorms, but everything else about it is pretty good. Okay. And Albertus. And both of them are celebrating anniversaries. So that's really a good thing.
Yeah, the 95th anniversary at Alberta. Sister Anna mentioned it this morning.
Yeah. We have some sisters who are outside of the working in universities. Sister Kathy Hilford is at Notre Dame, and our Annie is there now. You'll meet Annie tonight. Also,
The other Kathy too.
Pardon?
There's another Kathy at Notre Dame.
That's right. Oh, Kathy Cannon is at Notre Dame. So we have sisters at other places at Texas, University of Texas. I'm at Kent State.
Being in Diane Texas at ODU.
Yes, at ODU. Right. Yes. And healthcare, we have a number of healthcare centers. We have at each of the mother houses. Many of us have healthcare centers there. Here in Akron, we share with the Diocese of Cleveland at Regina Healthcare. We have Moen Healthcare, some of you might have seen. And the reason for showing you all of these, it most certainly is impressive, I think. And one of the things that we are trying to do is to make sure that our sisters and that we are really utilizing the buildings, the organizations in the best way that we can. And we call these our founding ministries. That means that the congregations who had them originally founded them. Like our Elms, we founded that. The Akron group founded that. Whereas Kent State, they did not found Kent State as much. So these are some of those other ministries as well. So thanks, Jean. We have Spiritual Life. We have wonderful, wonderful retreat centers here. And Mary was involved with the retreat center down in New Orleans. And of course, June at Miss Cuyuna. And a beautiful retreat center in Upper New York.
You're all
Near all, right. Thank you. I think that's about it. Yeah. So you might be thinking,
About Annie.
yes, Annie is in Notre Dame. Her studies, pardon?
She's a novice.
Right. She is not a still meet her tonight. Some of them have actually met her. But even more so, she is an example of someone who finished her studies and then is now in a fellowship program. Her studies are in medieval, and the Vatican asked Notre Dame to analyze and to study documents, medieval documents, and Annie is a part of that process. So that's really exciting that that's a part of what she's doing. And also, you might be thinking, okay, so I enter religious life. How do I even get a ministry? What do I do? What happens here? And I think it's a really good question because every different religious community is a little different in how they perceive it. In some religious congregations, they will tell you where to go. You will get your assignment and you will go, and oftentimes it's a little different from where you want to be, but you will go and hopefully and pray that it's exactly what you want to do. That's not the case here with our Dominican Sisters of Peace. In our Dominican, I told some of you this story, but it really is true, I think. When I first started thinking about religious life, the Catholic exponent in Youngstown had this insert, and all the religious communities were listed. And here was the Akron Dominicans, it said, Sister Rosemarie Robinson, president. And I said, because all the others were major superiors, superior generals, superior prioress. I said, how democratic. And then I looked into it more, and it really is democratic in many, many ways. And that is the same as our Dominican Sisters of Peace. It really is a listening, what Pat was saying too, what all of you were hearing this morning with Maura's talk and what Anna spoke about. It's that listening that we really look at. We don't look at the vow of obedience as somebody telling you what to do. Instead, we look at it as a mutual discernment, a mutual thinking of things in both ways. It's really that way. And, it really takes good leadership to carry that out. When I would like to do something different, you don't have to go to Pat. You go to your mission group coordinators. We have such wonderful mission group coordinators. We met Valerie. I would not go to Valerie. She's not my mission group coordinator. My mission group coordinator is in Dayton, actually, and she is Carol Gagey. And I would go to her, which I did at one point, and I would say, Carol, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And we just get initial comments, and we go back and forth, and she'll say to me, and she did, she said, look into it a little bit more. And I will check it out on my end, which means that she probably will take it to a council member to discuss it. So then we meet again after we both have had this mutual sharing, this mutual discussion. And then we can say yes. The council says yes, you say yes. And on either side, we can go back and forth. I sort of like it I know this might sound a little strange, I sort of like it to be, when I make a decision of those things, sort of like on a seesaw or something about that either way, it doesn't matter. Now, it might sound really strange. What do you mean? You don't care either way? No, I care very much, but I am open to whatever the situation is. So that's what I think our process of discernment is really about. I just want to say just a few things about, there's one other, just a short little thing about ministry that is important, I think. When I entered, I was told by my novice director, she said, you are not what your ministry is. Who you are is not what your ministry is. Now that might sound like, well, of course, like the first thing I ask people sometimes, the first thing we ask people is, what do you do? It's like I come to June and I go, oh, so June. Bea and I will get together and I'll say, Bea, what have you been doing?
Playing Scrabble.
Playing Scrabble, yeah, right. And losing to her twice. So my point is that who you are and what we are doing are very different things. Although one influences the other, as Pedro Arrupe said so beautifully, it helps most certainly. But I want to go back to Pedro Arrupe a little bit. At the end of his life, he had a very interesting life. He was in prison because he was a missionary in Japan. And when Hiroshima came, he was imprisoned. But he was also a medic, so he also helped people there. But in his last few years, obviously, he was the director of all the Jesuits in the whole world. The Master General of the Jesuits. But in the last 10 years of his life, he had a massive stroke. And he was bedridden. And this is what he says so beautifully at that time. Instead of saying, oh, I wish I could do more, I wish I could do something else, this is what he says. More than ever, I find myself in the hands of God. This is what I wanted all my life. But now there is a difference. The initiative is entirely with God. It is indeed a profound experience to know and to feel myself so totally in God's hands. I love that very powerful way of saying that it's not really what we do that influences us, it's how we are before God and that loving relationship. Ministry most certainly is a byproduct, a wonderful byproduct